You may know little or nothing about editing in Premiere Pro, but that's perfect because by the end of this video, you'll feel confident and ready to edit a full project from start to finish. Hi, I'm Dykink. I've been editing professionally since 2005, and I've been teaching on Skillshare since 2020, where more than 30,000 students worldwide have joined my classes and left great reviews. In this free class, you'll learn the essentials of Premiere Pro, from setting up a project and importing media, to navigating the workspace, editing with basic tools, adding text and keyframes, and exporting your final video. I'll be working with stock footage, music, and sound effects, but you can follow along with your own clips. Better yet, if you have your own footage or project you're working on, learn with that. By the end of this video, you're going to know how to start editing in Premiere Pro and approach any new projects with higher confidence. First things first, we're going to open up Premiere Pro, and I already have it pinned down on the bottom of my taskbar. And to do that, you can right click on the icon itself and then hit pin to taskbar. Right now it says unpin from taskbar because I already have it pinned on my taskbar, but it just makes it easier to access Premiere Pro and open it on a regular basis. This main splash screen is totally overwhelming, but don't worry, you could ignore 99% of this. Navigate up to the top left of the Premiere Pro splash screen and select New Project. Once you click that, we can name the project, and all you want to do is name it something that is easy to identify. And what I like to do is also include the date in the name. So 25 for the year, 09/30, 25/09/30. And now we have the date to make it easily identifiable. What I like to do is use underscores and dashes. Underscores to separate main ideas or main thoughts, and dashes to continue one main thought. So right here, I'll explain this with the dash. I'll just type in learn dash Premiere. That's it, simple as that. Learn Premiere. Create a project name that's easy to understand what's in it at a glance, so you're not guessing what is that project about. And the reason why I use underscores and dashes is because spaces or special characters like periods or exclamation marks, they're not universally supported by many systems. Maybe they are now, but because I started so long ago editing, this is just the habit I've gotten into. It's a lot more readable too than cramming the words together without separating them with spaces. And it offers some consistency, a standardized way to create readable file names and easy at a glance to recognize what the file is, why it's there, and what it's about. We're going to select location. The location is where you save your project. And this is preferably set to a different location than your desktop, and on an additional hard drive if you have one available. If you don't and you only have one hard drive, just set it to your C drive and create a new folder for that specific project. We'll choose location, and I have a dedicated SSD for all my editing projects, and I will select that SSD to save my project in. I'll create a new project folder for this. Learn. I have a project folder template where I've created a hierarchy with my folders where I like to store certain assets. It's consistent and it's easy to remember where each file or asset is located. And I can click and drag it and copy it directly into my new project folder. And I've included this in the description, so you can download that if you like this as well. I'm gonna choose the save location for my Premiere Pro project in the projects folder that I have set. Again, you can create whatever folder structure you'd like. For template, we're not going to get into that right now. This is a beginner's class. Also, skip import mode. Yes, click skip import mode because I have a preferred method of importing media that I would suggest. You could ignore every other import method and stick with the one I'm going to teach you in this class. And you're also going to notice this little gear icon. That is project settings. Just leave that as is. Default settings. This all works, and most of the time I keep it as is. It's going to work great for most projects. And then hit create. And that's it. You've created your Premiere Pro project. This is where things can be a bit overwhelming, but don't worry, I'm going to take you through in a systematic, step-by-step way where it's going to be easy to identify what's going on and follow a tried and true editing process. If your workspace does not look like this, navigate up to Window and then to Workspaces. And in your workspaces, you can select Essentials. And what that will do is give you something similar to what I have set up here. This is the default workspace, so I would suggest starting with this. Now, panels and windows are modular, so you can move them how you like. You can make them bigger, smaller, you can move them around. You can take the panel itself, these are called panels or windows, and you can move them wherever you want, which is great. You could even move them right beside another window and create and customize whatever way you like. This is a complete mess. A lot of times this sways people away from customizing their workspace, but there's an easy button to reset everything, and that's under Window, Workspaces, Reset to Saved Layout. And the default shortcut is Alt or Option plus Shift plus O, and you're going to want to get used to using shortcuts or hotkeys so you can quickly work through your project. If you're just opening up Premiere Pro for the first time, start with a few shortcuts and learn from there. At least try to use shortcuts as much as you can, because it's going to make editing so much more fun. You want it to be an enjoyable process, and shortcuts make it enjoyable, because then you can work as fast as your brain will eventually. And I'll hit Reset to Save Layout. Beautiful. Now everything's reset back to the default window layout. You might also click on this little hamburger icon and accidentally close the panel. Oh shoot, we just closed our program monitor. Don't worry, you can navigate back to Window and find the window you just closed. We closed the program monitor. And again, if you don't know which window you closed, that's fine. You can always select the workspaces and select the workspace or Reset to Save Layout to get all the windows and panels back into place. Let's start with the most important panel in Premiere Pro, and that's the project panel of the project window. Now, this is the central hub for your assets. I like to call it the brain, because everything funnels through the project panel into our main edit. And I have one super important tip here, is to keep it as organized as possible. More on that later. Before we can even start editing, we need footage, we need music, we need sound effects. And to get all that footage in here, we need to import media, but we're not gonna click import media. We're not gonna drag media here to import, because the preferred method is to use the media browser. We'll select Window, navigate down to Media Browser. Now we've stacked the Media Browser panel within this whole group of panels here. You can move it if you'd like, if it's getting in the way. Sometimes I like to do that, and then that kind of messes up the panels we have here. So I'll just use my scroll wheel to get back to my project panel. Now, the reason why I like to use the media browser is because it reduces any chances of your project files getting corrupted or problems relinking down the road. This is a beginner class. We're not getting into all that. I'm just trying to set you up with good habits so that you're sticking to the correct way of doing things right away. If you're working on small projects, clicking and dragging into your timeline or into the project panel, or clicking import media or using shortcuts to import media, it's okay. It's not what I would suggest, but you can still do that for small projects where you're not sharing project files with other editors and you're the sole editor on the project, or you don't need to open it up years down the road. But because inevitably you're going to need to open it up 5 years down the road and something could go wrong, I would suggest using the media browser. In the media browser, I'm going to select the hard drive that I saved our main project folder to, Learn Premiere. I've located it, double click that to open it up, and I'll open this up so we can just see it a bit better. And what you'll see now is this media browser looks awfully similar to the Windows Explorer or Mac Finder, depending on what you're using. Except this window, the media browser, everything is non-destructive. This means that I can't delete, I can't copy, can't move anything, I can't copy paste anything, or move any folder or file around. And this is great because then you're not accidentally moving things around in the media browser, you're not deleting anything by accident, you're not messing up file or folder organization unintentionally. And this is another benefit of using the media browser over Windows Explorer or Mac Finder, because you can accidentally delete files or folders in here or move things around unintentionally. And that is one warning that I have, is that if you move anything, any of your assets that you've imported into Premiere Pro, you can break the link that Premiere has to the specific footage that you have in your project file. Keep things as they are, don't move them later on or you'll break links. And as a beginner, it's not a fun mess to deal with. The next thing we want to do is import our assets. I just added video and music for now. So I'll navigate to my video folder, and you can see if I double click on it, now I suddenly have all this footage in here. That's great. What I can do is hit the back button on here to get back to my main folder, and I can just click and drag it directly into the project panel, and that imports it correctly. I can also right click on the folder itself and click import. And I want to make sure that my video folder is not highlighted. Otherwise, when I hit import, it will bring it into that folder. So I'll click off of that folder for now. Right click on my music folder, then select import. So those are two ways you can import from the media browser, and those are technically the correct ways to avoid any problems down the line. I'm gonna hit Shift Command or Alt 0 to reset my save layout. Things went a bit funny there because I moved the media browser to the right of the project panel. Now my project panel is undocked. That's okay. I'll just click and drag that back into this group of panels. If you are just importing individual files into the project panel, then I'm going to recommend that you create folders, and you can do that by clicking New Bin on this little New Bin icon, or you can right click New Bin, or even better, use the hotkey or shortcut Control or Command B to create a new bin, name it, and then we'll name it something better than that. We're staying organized as best as possible, and this is why I like working with this project folder template, because you could just drag full folders in without having to worry about creating bins directly in Premiere Pro. Inevitably, you're going to have to do that though, so knowing how to create a bin and keep your organization as best as possible is essential to being a good editor. It helps keep you focused on what you're trying to do well, and that's storytelling. You don't want to be focusing on the program so much as the story you're trying to tell through the edit. Now that we have the bare minimum of assets that we want to use to start working on, the next thing you're going to want to do is create a sequence. A sequence is where your edit lives, the final cuts, transitions, graphics, music, and I like to think of a sequence as a container that holds all of these assets that we've imported together. The easiest way to create a new sequence is to right-click on a clip and then select New Sequence from Clip. And when I hit New Sequence from Clip, that clip that we created a new sequence from has jumped into our timeline, which is this long panel at the bottom here, and that's the container I'm talking about. This sequence is a container to hold all of our clips, music, sound effects, graphics, and eventually we're going to take that and turn it into a video file when we export our footage. So whoops, I accidentally closed my sequence. Well, that's okay. It's right here. Double click on it and we'll load it right back up into the timeline. This little sequence icon is the container holding this individual clip that we've created a sequence from. By default, the sequence is named according to the clip that you've created the sequence from. So I'll change this name to, again, using the date in the name, 250930, and then underscore. Yeah, I can just name it Learn Premiere. Enter. Adding the date in the name of the sequence means that the next day I work on this project, if I make significant progress, I can copy paste this sequence and rename it with the updated date, 251001. What this does is it creates redundancy. Now I have a list of sequences that I can work off of and see the progress as I work through this project edit. And what it allows me to do is create that redundancy so that if I ever need to go back to an older edit, or I've made changes the next day that I don't like, I can always revert back to my older sequence and work from there. Or I could take chunks of that sequence and move them into my new sequence. So think about it as you're creating all these different containers that contain different types of edits. Creating redundancy can help with that creative process. I'm going to delete that new sequence because we're just going to work on this one today. First thing I want to do after I've named my sequence is move it out of my video folder, so I can click and drag that down to the bottom. I'll move it out. What I'll do is click on this little triangle to close the folder, hit Control or Command B to create a new bin. I like to number and name my folders similarly to my project folder template, where 07 is projects, here it's sequences. So I'll hit enter for sequences and I'll click and drag the sequence into the sequences folder. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it differently if you'd like. Just try to have some sort of logical reasoning behind your folder hierarchy and what you number it. So it's easier to remember each time you create a new project or you continue working on a project. With this sequence, we can also click and drag new clips to the Premiere Pro timeline. This one here actually also has audio. It's muted, but the audio comes into the audio tracks underneath the video tracks. Another thing that's changed when we created this new sequence is that the program monitor is in focus now, and the program monitor is connected directly to the timeline. So anything in our timeline is displayed in the program monitor. So if I click and drag what's called the playhead, this blue line here, and I move it back and forth, it displays the exact frame within our clip in the program monitor. So the timeline and the program monitor are directly connected. I can also click on the play button in the program monitor and it will toggle playback within the timeline. Again, connected. And using the spacebar is an easy way to start and stop playback as well, but I prefer to click and drag what's known as scrubbing because it's tactile and it's easy to quickly preview what is in your timeline. With all this footage in the timeline, it's time to put some clips together, and the main tool used for trimming is the selection tool, and we have the selection tool enabled here. You can see in the toolbar the selection tool. I'm going to delete some of these clips in our timeline so we can see what's going on a bit better. I can use the selection tool to click and drag in and out points on an individual clip. And notice here that when I try to drag it further than the out point of the original clip, it says trim media limit reached on video 1. This little round corner icon indicates that that is the true end of this clip in the timeline. Let's get another clip in here. And I can also use the selection tool to click and drag clips around. As you click and drag a clip past another, it'll do what's called snapping. And that's helpful to avoid blank frames between clips. It can sometimes get a bit annoying though when you don't want everything to snap in place. So toggling it off right here, snap in timeline, will stop that snapping from occurring. In addition to the selection tool, you can make use of the razor tool to cut up clips. The razor tool is in the toolbars right here. With the razor tool toggled, I can click on any point in our clip to create a split to cut the clip into many parts. And switching back to the selection tool, I can click and drag any one of those parts around and rearrange as you like. If you don't like what you've done, simply hit Ctrl or Command Z to undo. Using the selection tool in addition to the razor tool is a great way to make quick edits in your timeline. Now, eventually you're going to want to add more clips to the timeline to tell a coherent story, and you can select any clip within the project panel that you want to add to the timeline and click and drag it down to the timeline. But what happens when you click and drag certain clips down to the timeline is that they can be extremely huge in the timeline, and that's not always ideal. And the best practice with editing in Premiere Pro is to pre-edit the clips before bringing them into the timeline. And pre-editing simply means choosing the portion of the clip you want to bring down to the timeline instead of the entire clip itself. So to pre-edit a clip, you can double click on it in the project panel, and what this does is it loads it up into the source monitor. It's not to be confused with the program monitor, which is grouped with the source monitor. If we click on the program monitor, again, the program monitor is connected directly to what's in the timeline. Now, clicking on the source monitor, that brings up the clip that we double-clicked from the project panel. It's very easy to get these two mixed up. A good solution to this is just to move the program monitor to the right of the source monitor so you have both monitors visible. It can make it a bit easier to work with as a beginner. So if you prefer to do that, I would suggest doing that now. But I like to have a lot of screen real estate, so I don't mind the program monitor being grouped with the source monitor. In the source monitor, I can play back clips. I can click and drag quickly, scrubbing through to preview the clip and see what's in it. But to get even more control over playback, I suggest using the JKL key shortcuts, and these correspond to shuttle left, shuttle stop, and shuttle right. Shuttle right means it plays footage back. Shuttle stop means it stops playback, and shuttle left means it reverses playback. So you can quickly do that with the default shortcuts J, K, and L. In addition to scrubbing, I'll use the JKL keys to locate the portion of the clip that I want to bring into our main edit. So let's see here. I like the most intense portions of this clip where you see the lightning kind of flickering in the sky in the top right here. So I'll stop there. And now I can use these two buttons right here to mark an in point and an out point. And you can also use the shortcuts I and O to set in and out points. I'll set an in point where I want the clip to begin, and then I'll use J to shuttle forward. That's good. I think that's enough. And now I'll set an out point to mark the end of the clip. So these in and out points tell Premiere Pro which part of the clip you want to bring into the timeline. And once the in and out points are set, I can click and drag the clip directly from the source monitor into the timeline by clicking on the image or on this little film strip icon to bring only the video in. If you ever want to readjust a clip that you've already pre-edited from the timeline, double-click the clip to bring it back into the source monitor. And you'll see it has our in and out points. And what I can do is click on these little handles here to zoom in or zoom out so I could see more of the clip. And you can readjust these in and out points as you like. It updates the clip in the timeline. Set the out point a bit further, maybe just a bit less. Okay, there. Let's add some music to this. I'll open up the music folder. I got a lot of different tracks to choose from. And again, what do we do when we want to preview a clip or even audio? We'll double click it into the source monitor. That's right. You can also double click music or sound effects into the source monitor to play them back. I'm going to put on my headphones now so I can get a better idea of what this sounds like. And what's happening is it's still playing through my monitor. What you can do to change that is navigate to Edit, Preferences, Audio Hardware. Clicking on this, we have our default input. Default output is what we're looking for. Right now it's set to my main monitor. I can click on this and find my headphones, which are headphones high definition audio device. Device changes can modify channel mappings. Do you want to continue? Yes, we want to continue. Okay, now everything's gonna come through my headphones. Ah, much better. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Let's try this one. This kind of suits the vibe, I think, of the footage that I have within the timeline already. So I'll stick with this track, and I can once again click and drag it directly from the source monitor into the timeline. I don't know how long I want the clip to be yet, so I'll keep it as is. You could click and drag a video clip above V3 to create a new track, or you can click the music down below this mix line to create a new audio track. I'm not a huge fan of how big these tracks are, so what you could do is hover your mouse into this track area, either in video or audio, hold shift, and then use the scroll wheel to make the track smaller or larger depending on how you like them. For me, I don't mind them being this closed up so that I could see more of the clips going on, and usually I have timelines that contain quite a bit going on in them. So being able to see more clips at a time is an advantage. When it comes to audio though, you're going to want to be able to see the audio waveforms, which are these little peaks and valleys in your audio, and that gives you a good visual representation of what's happening with your music or your sound effects. Clicking on the eyeball next to each track will make the video on the track disappear. And like toggling visibility for video, you can also click the M on any one of these tracks to mute the track. If you click on the lock icon next to any one of these audio or video tracks, what it will do is it will lock the track entirely, meaning you can't select it, you can't move it, it's locked. You gotta be careful though not to lock any individual track on accident, because if you intend to move a bunch of clips at once, that one's not coming along with it. What this is good for is when your edit is done and you don't want any more changes, you can lock all your tracks. If you hold shift and click on the locks, you can unlock or lock all of the video or audio tracks at once. And this also applies to toggling the eyeballs or muting audio. I'm not a huge fan of having all these empty tracks when there's nothing in them. Right click in this empty area, hit delete tracks, delete all video tracks, all empty tracks, delete audio tracks, all empty tracks. And now it's a lot neater to look at. Using the razor and selection tool, I've cut these 3 clips down a bit more and in the order that I prefer. Let's play this back and take a look. Okay, not bad. It's a bit slow, but this is where another tool comes into play. If I want to edit on one of the piano hits or the main beats in this track, I can use the rolling edit tool. It's one of my favorite tools and it allows you to adjust any trim point quickly. But the advantage it has over the selection tool is it adjusts edit points between 2 separate clips simultaneously. Select the rolling edit tool, it's right here, but right now the ripple edit tool is selected. Click and hold the ripple edit tool and it will reveal a number of tools available. Select rolling edit tool. The rolling edit tool is one of my favorite tools because it quickly allows you to adjust an edit point between 2 separate clips and roll it to the left or right to extend or decrease a clip. But what this means is I can find the edit point in the music. So right here, boom. I'll use the rolling edit tool to click and drag the clip and snap it on the playhead. And now, playing it back, that matches to our music a bit better. You don't have to match everything to music, but it can quickly get you to something that feels a bit more intentional for the viewer. Let's add some sound effects. I've imported some sound effects already, and when it comes to track organization, I like to keep my music further down than my sound effects, so I'll click and drag the music 2 tracks down, so I have 2 tracks of sound effects to work with. Double click on the sound effect to load it in the source monitor. It all pretty much sounds the same, so I can add in and out points just to make it a bit more manageable. Click and drag it down to A1, and let's listen. Interesting. Okay, it's interesting. It does something. We're trying to create some sort of emotion and feeling with this, and I find that sound effects really help immerse you into the scene a bit more. So we're creating a soundscape to bring you into the feeling of the clip. But right now, the sound effect is overpowering the music. So what I could do is bring the volume of the sound effect down. Already we have our track heights. They're all mixed up down here. I can use my Shift plus scroll wheel to close them up. But to work with an audio clip, I would double click on the track to open it up into a larger size. I could even move this divider line just a bit more so I could see the sound effect a bit better. Clicking on these little handles here will zoom in or zoom out. You can also use the equal key or the dash key to zoom in and out of your timeline. Expanding the track height for audio track 1 also reveals this line, which is the volume line, and you can click and drag it up or down to increase or decrease the audio levels. But I don't just want to adjust the volume of the entire clip. I would rather bring down certain parts of the clip or bring up certain parts of the clip, and I can do that by using the pen tool in the toolbar. The pen tool allows you to add different points on this volume line. Click and drag these points to create some variability in the audio levels. I will have the sound effect come in a bit louder and then slowly dip out to 0. Maybe right away even. We could just even bring it down just a bit. There. How about something like that? Play it back. Interesting. I don't mind it dipping all the way out, but let's see what it sounds like with the sound effects still intact. So it's a bit more subtle of a change. Nice. That's more gradual. It's a bit easier to watch, and you don't notice that change so dramatically. It helps me feel like I'm still in the scene. Another option when it comes to dipping out audio is to select the selection tool and then click on this little gray icon at the in point or out point of the audio. And this will give you the ability to change the curve of how the music fades out or fades in. I like to pair changing the volume line using the pen tool and using these audio transitions to create a more dynamic fade. You can slowly ease it out here. So I've added more clips to the timeline. I've moved some things around so it creates more of a cohesive story. And I've done something similar like this in the past where I add large individual letters and they're featured for a few seconds each to spell out a whole word. So I thought we could do the same thing here with the word Alberta and spell that out with large letters. To add text, you can use the text tool and click on the program monitor to add the text. Once added, a text layer appears above the clip adder playhead. And with this text layer selected in our timeline, this is where using the properties and the effects controls panels come into play. After adding text into the program monitor, the properties panel will automatically come into focus. And this is great for making quick adjustments like adjusting text size, position, or changing the styling of your text. I'll find my preferred font, which is Futura PT Extra Bold. I'll type in the letter A. Okay, once I did that, it changed the font. So I'll type in Futura again. Now I can adjust the font size so it's a bit larger, and you can go beyond 400 font size. That's just where the slider ends. 1600. So the properties panel, it's great for making quick adjustments like this. The effects controls panel, which is found right beside of the properties panel, is also a great place to make quick adjustments where we can adjust position, scale, rotation, and you can come into the text section to change the font. But which one do you use? Well, the effects controls panel also has this space to the right of it, which is where you can create keyframes, which are used to animate these different properties. So if you're going to be animating I would suggest using the FX Controls panel. If you're going to make quick adjustments without animation, use the Properties panel. In the Properties panel, if I select the text layer, it will create this bounding box and I can click and drag and move it. It is snapping to these different red lines, these different red guides. To toggle snapping in the program monitor, navigate down to this plus button here, which is the button editor. And this reveals the button editor, and these buttons can be added and customized to the empty space beneath the program monitor. This icon, Snap in Program Monitor, is extremely helpful and toggled on. You can simply click and drag it down to the button bar underneath the program monitor to make it easily accessible, and toggling this off, no snapping, toggling it on, we get snapping in the program monitor, which makes it easy to keep everything centered and in place. If you want to create different points to snap text, then I would suggest clicking on View, down to Show Rulers. With the rulers toggled on, you can click and drag from here what are called guides. And they don't render with your video. They're simply guides that are only visible in the program monitor that can help you with design or other visual elements where you need specific placement. So now that we have these guides set, I can click and drag and snap this letter directly to these guides. If you don't like these guides, you can click and drag them back out from where you got them and they're gone. Or you can go to View, Clear Guides, or toggle off Show Guides to hide them. I'll clear guides. Now you might be curious about animating because I mentioned keyframes. So let's keyframe something quickly. Let's keyframe this letter A. We'll have it slide in and then slide out. Click on the text layer in our timeline and then navigate up to Effects Controls. And because we want it to slide in from the left to the right, we will toggle animation for our position property. Click on the stopwatch icon to toggle animation. And this will create a diamond, which is a keyframe. And a keyframe is saying, hey, we're recording this position. Let me open this up so we can see it a bit better. We're recording this position, X 1920 by Y 1080. This is the position of our frame. And if we move it around, you can see the position changes. We can move it off the screen. And now this keyframe is saying, hey, this is the recorded position that we're storing in this keyframe. Now, if I move this around, nothing changes because we only have one keyframe that's saying this is the recorded position. But if we want to record another position, we can move the playhead somewhere else, say a bit further. I'll click on this diamond icon to add a new keyframe, and that records a new position. But the position is the same here. So if we change the X position and I move it, like we said, we want it to slide in. We could even just move it to the center here. Now that changes the information stored in this keyframe. So now we're saying at this keyframe, we want the position to be 1920 by 1080. Now, if I click and drag this back, the A is moving because it's trying to get from this recorded position in this keyframe, in keyframe A, to this 1920 by 1080 position that we recorded in keyframe B. So now playing it back, it moves into place. And to change the speed at which it moves from one position to the other, click and drag the keyframes away from each other for slower or closer to each other to make it faster. The animation is really jarring. It's very rough. And to change that, we can right click on the keyframe and then navigate down to temporal interpolation. Temporal means time, the amount of time something takes, and interpolation means the motion or the movement between keyframes. So right click, temporal interpolation, and we'll select ease out. So what this does is now the keyframe looks different. It's got this like little sideways bow tie. It will ease out of this position, and so it'll go slow to fast. But now we have this abrupt stop on keyframe 2. We could also right click on this keyframe, navigate down to temporal interpolation, and select ease in so the animation eases into the second keyframe position. That looks much better. For this edit, I don't need any animation, so toggle the stopwatch to delete the keyframes. And if at any point you don't like the position or the scale or the rotation, click the reset parameter icon to the right of that property. There are many nuances to editing. As you get better and as you learn, you're going to notice that you make decisions right away off the front that may not be the best choice. I added music, wasn't the greatest choice. I thought it was. But this is just part of the process, so don't feel bad if your edit's not feeling polished right away. That's just not how it works. We do this in passes. You have to continue to work and massage the edit until you get something that looks a bit more presentable or sounds a bit more presentable. It just takes time and practice and effort. So keep working through your edit in passes over and over again. I did make a few changes to my edit. I added different music, I added a few more sound effects, and really the basics apply here. Load up the clip or the audio or the music into the source monitor, pre-edit, and then drag it down to the timeline and make adjustments from there. I've done a few more things to my edit to make it look and feel a little bit more interesting and fit the overall vibe of what I'm trying to do with this. It's getting there, it's getting better. So now it's time to export our video. Exporting simply means compiling everything in your timeline into a video file that can be played back or uploaded online for viewing. It can be complicated when you're starting out and scary, but don't worry, we're gonna simplify this so you can come out with a quick video file that looks good for viewing and for uploading to the web. But before we export it, we need to make sure that there's no clips that are sitting around at the end of our timeline, or those will be exported as well. No extra clips in there, no blank frames. Good. Now all we need to do is hit File, then Export. Media. And once we hit this button, it'll bring us to the export settings page. And because this is super overwhelming and it's a beginner's class, let's focus on just getting this exported in the simplest way possible. First, we want to name our file, but look at this. We already named the date and we have the name. And this is a pretty good file name already because it's pretty easy to understand what is going on. Also, click Location, navigate to our project folder, and then this is where our exports folder comes into play. We can store all of our versions of our edit in this exports folder. So I'll hit Save. Then, to keep things simple, we're gonna ignore all of this down here and select a preset. All you have to do is choose high quality HD or high quality 4K, depending on what footage you're working with. We select 4K, and then all we have to do is hit export. A few moments later, we have our file ready to watch. In our exports folder, we have our exported file that we can upload or view. There's so many techniques that could take you from beginner to pro in editing proficiency and speed and storytelling. To get the most out of this, you really want to be working on a project. Apply what you learned to your own footage, or take some of the classes I offer with class projects available to work on and personalized feedback on your class projects. You can find the link in the description below. And as always, I have more free video editing content on my YouTube channel, like this video right here, where I share some essential video editing techniques to take you from average to great. All right, thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.